And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. And it's a bit of a different one today because, as you can see, it's just me. Or if you're listening, you're only going to hear me today. Connor is on vacation. So the next two episodes, it's just me, my thoughts, and my review. But that's okay because we got a lot to cover. And we are going to start with a decision day review and wild card match preview. Decision day is done. And even though going into the day, there were a ton of things that were already decided, this was still one for the history books. So many last minute decisions impacting seeding, conference champions, records, all of it. We're going to briefly cover over, or I'm going to briefly cover the biggest moments of decision day, and then we'll follow that with a preview of both of the playing games. I'm Andrew. There's no Connor. Welcome to the Designated Players, the postseason edition. Now, this is usually where I toss it over Connor. Say, Connor, how you doing? And we do a little banter back and forth. But we're gonna just move right on because even though it's just me today, that does not mean we change what we do. And we are gonna go with Scarf of the Week, and I am breaking out. It's upside down. The Vancouver Whitecaps scarf because, as we know, they were a big talking point this decision day. Lots of stuff to talk about with them later on in the episode, so don't miss out on it. Now, let's be real. We'd be remiss not to chat about some of the biggest headlines from decision day. And all we can say is you're welcome, MLS fans, because we all know that if we did our annual decision day live stream, every game would have ended 0-0 and nobody would have had any fun. So you are welcome. On decision day, Miami sets the point record off an unbelievable night off the bench from Lionel Messi. LAFC win the West on a wild stoppage time period with three lead changes, ending on a Houston Dynamo winner in the 101st minute. Orlando should have knocked out their rivals Atlanta from the playoffs in stoppage time until VAR overturns the Duncan McGuire goal. Vancouver wins the home playoff game in the West, but they're still going to have to play away anyway, and Red Bull battle back from 2 goals down just to concede in stoppage time to the Columbus Crew. Okay, maybe that last one wasn't as big, but let's move on and get started with the record. Inter Miami go with a semi-rotated lineup against the worst defensive side in the conference with the record for points in a season on the line. The people who held that record, the New England Revolution, the team that Miami were playing this week. New England were playing for pride at this point to make sure that they could hold on to that record and still have something to write home about. And that showed because just 75 seconds into the match, they were up 1-0. And after 30 minutes, they were up 2. Then Miami would score 6 unanswered goals, including a hat trick and an assist from Lionel Messi in just 30 minutes of play to win the points record and earn a spot in the Club World Cup, as announced by FIFA President Gianni Infantino. Couple things that we were going to talk about today. Rotated lineups in a point setting game and where you go from that. We'll also cover a little bit on how they handled awarding the Club World Cup spot and if Messi should still be the MVP. So to start, we'll go with this rotated lineup thing. And personally for me, the idea that you have this record on the line, but you know that you still have at least 5 extra games still to go. What are you most going to be remembered for? Are you going to be remembered for your points record, or are you going to be remembered for possibly winning MLS Cup? Obviously, it's going to be MLS Cup, right? So the idea that they rotated this lineup, they sat their best player, and they were going up against one of the worst defensive teams in the league as well. I don't blame them for what they did. And I also give Tata credit for reacting after he went down so quickly to make some changes, right? He knew that Messi was going to come on at some point. He knew that he was going to come in and make a difference. And boy, did he make a difference. I mean, 3 goals and an assist in 30 minutes is just nonsense. It's just absolutely, it's FIFA numbers. He put up FIFA numbers in this game like he has done all season long. Absolutely unbelievable. And you can't write that sort of stuff. You just can't. So no qualms for me on the way that they handled that game in the lineup they set. Because if you look at it, it's still very, very strong outside of maybe one of the center backs that they had. You still played with Suarez, you played with Gressel, you played with Yannick Bright in the midfield, you played with Busquets, you played with Jordi Alba, you play with Drake Callender in goal. So you still had enough to get it done. And when they went down 2-0, it was kind of like a shock to them, right? Oh, we got to get back and we got to get going. So it was not terribly disappointing until the result came. And it was kind of a wake up moment for them, I think. And when they came out of I mean, right before going into halftime, having Luis Suarez put a brace up in 3 minutes was huge for them. I think if they go into halftime 2-0, it's a completely different game. They might be bringing Messi on earlier. They might be doing a lot to try and get that done. But it's kind of a credit to what they've done and understanding that, yeah, we don't want to just win. We want to be the best at everything we do. So you look at a team like Inter Miami and you go, yeah, okay, we won Supporters Shield, but we don't want to just win Supporters Shield. We want to be the best that's ever won Supporters Shield. And they go out and they do that. They've spent the money and they've said it multiple times in off seasons that, yeah, we want to be setting the tone for what this league is about, right? We want to be able to spend and bring in all these big name players. We want to make the league different. So it's a credit to them on their style of how they approach things. We'll jump into the next one then and kind of skip here. We'll go over to Messi MVP because I have been on record saying it's tough to give Messi the MVP if he's missed half the games and if his team has been so good without him and all this sort of stuff. But this game might have changed my mind. I think the impact that he has, and I get it depends on the way you look at it, right? Is MVP the most valuable player to their team, or are they just the best player in the league? So I think that gets conflated sometimes. There's no doubt that Messi is the best player in the league. I mean, the numbers that he put out, if you played him 10 more games and he doesn't do anything, you just give him those minutes. He's still in the conversation. He's probably going to win the thing. So my opinions have changed a little bit, and I think that doesn't play as big of a part in it anymore. And I also think that there is a something to be said that even though he's not playing, he's still impacting that team. He's still making the team play a certain way, right? When Messi comes in, he has freedom to do a lot of different things, but even without him, they're still playing in a very similar style. That he's just not the one who's in the game making things happen. But you still have Suarez making the same runs that he's making, Alba playing the same balls that he's making. They're not different. And they did that when Messi came in and tried to play around that. So I am going to probably change my idea here and say Messi for MVP. I would cast my vote for him. And I had Cucho going first, and he's been great, and he does a lot. Again, it'll be dependent on how you approach this. I think Messi's if MVP to you is best player in the league, Messi takes MVP. If MVP is most valuable to their team, I still think it's Cucho because if you take Cucho out of Columbus, I think they're different than when you took Messi out of Miami, if that makes sense. So from there, that's where it splits. But I'm going to change my viewpoint on this and say there are two people who are deserving of it, and I think they're going to give it. Well, I always thought they were going to give it to Messi, whether he deserved it or not. But I do think he's done enough to earn that title. And then finally, let's chat a little bit about this Club World Cup fiasco because again, a nightmare of a situation and a lot of flack being given to MLS and this one not rightfully so, okay? Because this is a FIFA decision and they've made that clear from the start. But there was no information on how the Club World Cup extra slot, the host slot, if you will, was going to be allotted. Was it going to be MLS Cup? Was it going to be Supporter Shield? What was it going to be? Random team with X amount of points? How was it going to be? Nobody knew. Well, when Miami won the Shield, Gianni Infantino flew down to Miami and you knew what was happening. At the end of the day, when they did their Supporter Shield trophy lift and they celebrated being the best team in the regular season, Gianni Infantino jumped up on the mic and said, "Congratulations for your efforts as being the best team in the league. You are going to get a spot in the Club World Cup and you're going to host the first game." And they give all these awards to them. And the question is, did they handle this properly? I'll tell you, for me, I don't like the way it happened. I don't like the way FIFA did this. I'm not shocked by it, but I don't like the way it happened because it would have been nice to know going into the season saying, hey, if you win this, you go. Now, FIFA being what they are, it doesn't shock me in the slightest. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't shock me in the slightest. But if you go in the beginning of should Miami not be there? No, I don't think that's the case. Because if you went out in the beginning and said, hey, the winner of the Supporter Shield is going to get the Club World Cup spot, I don't think anybody tries any harder or less hard in other tournaments to try and win the Supporters Shield. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. That being said, it should have been decided before the season kicked off. I'm not buying this, they always knew it and they just never announced. I don't buy that, right? They were waiting to see which trophy Lionel Messi won to market their tournament because it's not gaining a lot of ground, right? They don't have a TV sponsor, they don't have a ton of networks jumping at the bit to take it on. Like it's very clear that they needed a reason for this to go, and Lionel Messi was that reason. Now, that's par for the FIFA course. I don't like it, but again, the whole, MLS is giving Messi whatever he wants. This isn't an MLS decision. All they could do is, suggest, hey, we have two tournaments. We've got the MLS Cup, we got Leagues Cup, or we have three tournaments: MLS Cup, Leagues Cup, and Supporter Shield. And I don't say the Open Cup because they tried to pull out of the Open Cup. We know that whole story. So my guess is they probably wouldn't have suggested the Open Cup, right? But here are the three things that you can win to be considered for the next, the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You can pick out of one of those. And my guess is that FIFA said, okay, well um the one that Messi's most likely to win. That's the way this feels like this went. And they said Supporter Shield because the playoffs are a crapshoot. We know that, right? One seed loses to eight seed last year, no problem. So it's not a shoe-in that if they said, okay, MLS Cup gets it at the beginning, then that they would get Messi to be there. Right, wrong, or indifferent. This is my best guess at how this went down. I don't love it. A lot of people don't love it, and I don't think people are wrong for not loving it. But we're here. History will remember it as they gave it to the Supporter Shield winners, and they went on, and Miami did a lot of great things. They played, Messi versus a whole bunch of other teams, and maybe they get a Barcelona or Real Madrid rematch, something like that. But yeah, I'm not thrilled with the way that happened, and I think that they should have done it better. But I'm also not losing sleep over it because it doesn't shock me, not in the slightest. That was over in the Eastern Conference, but let's jump on over to the other side of the country in the Western Conference, where there were absolute scenes in Los Angeles in the latter half of Decision Day. To break down what happened, we have to go to the start. In a Decision Day with so much on the line for both LA sides, there was one team that was fighting for relevancy. San Jose, who were on the brink of setting the record for most goals against in a single season, needed a hero. Somebody to lift up the spirits of this down and outside and give them hope that they could play spoiler tonight. Then, when our country, nay, when our world needed him most, our Lord and Savior, our King, our 2026 USMNT captain, center mid, Jackson Ewell, scores to give San Jose the lead. One has to imagine he ran straight to the camera and said, "Never play me at center back again because I'm a striker." He put LAFC on the back foot with first place slipping. All they could hope for was the Galaxy were also not doing so well, and that was the case. They weren't faring very well away at Houston, where they were defending for their lives from the start, clearing balls off the line and trying to hold on because all they needed was a point and it would see them go to the top of the conference. In the 42nd minute, they conceded to an Ezequiel Ponce tap-in, and it was still anybody's game. Both LA Galaxy and LAFC were 1 point away from the top of the table. Minutes into the second half, and LAFC have life. Denny Bouanga scoring to level the game and put LAFC into first place for the moment. They would add another through Atuesta before finally the fun kicked off. Newest signing Marlin scored in the 91st minute of their game to make it 3-1, all but securing 3 points for the LAFC. As long as the Galaxy didn't score and tie their game, they would move to the top of the table. But if that was the case, this story would suck and it would not be worth telling. The LA Galaxy were awarded a penalty kick in the 96th minute of 97 to be played and should have been nominated for MVP. Gabriel Peck steps up and buries it with confidence. With just minutes to go after the VAR review, LA Galaxy took the top spot. All they needed to do was hold on until the end. But that's when Houston said, "Hold my beer." In the added time of the added time, Houston charges down the field, and in the 101st minute, it's left back Daniel Ceres, who saw what Jackson Ewell did at halftime and said, anything you can do, I can do better. He charged up the pitch, gets in the box, puts his head on the wide service from Griffin Dorsey, flicking it to the back post and in. Houston win the game, LAFC win the conference, and everyone in BMO, MLS 360 Studio, and the world loses their mind. LAFC finished in first, the Galaxy in second, and Houston move up to fifth. If Houston had lost that game, they're down to sixth, and if the Galaxy and LAFC switch spots, there's a completely different matchup in the playoffs. And the question is, did any team improve or hurt their chances in the playoffs on decision day? To me, Houston's going to be flying after that one, right? 101st minute winner on decision day to beat the top of the table team is massive. And you know that a coach like Benny Ball Ben Olsen is going to milk that for all it's worth. Every day they're going to talk about momentum and mindset and mentality. They have to go and travel to Seattle, who are a very tough side to play, very strong defensively. But I think Houston lucked out because they can handle that attack better than they would RSL's attack. With the Galaxy, I'm sure they would have loved to win the West here, but I also think they might have lucked out just being in second. Colorado are in a tough run of form, and that's probably because I backed them so highly in our predictions. So I'm sorry for that, Colorado fans. But you get a Colorado team that's in a tough run of form versus a Vancouver and Portland side that are both super dangerous when they're fully fit. The Galaxy have done the double over Colorado this season. They also have done the double over Vancouver, but Portland beat them 4-2 in their last match that they played. So if you have to take a shot at a team that you know you can beat and you know how to break down versus one who is as unpredictable as Portland, you take the sure beat, right? You take the sure bet and you go in and you're happy going against a team that you know is not playing super well right now and is leaking goals. Then the last team that moved on this day was LAFC, and they're now the ones who have to take on Vancouver or Portland. Low key, I'm hoping it's Portland because that game's probably going to end 9-8 and it's going to be absolute scenes and a ton of fun to watch. But LAFC will probably also be hoping for Portland as they did the double over them this season, while Vancouver got a draw off them earlier in the year. Either way, the West is going to be fun, and these games on decision day were a complete depiction of that. And finally, we need to go to Atlanta versus Orlando. Atlanta starts the day in 11th, needing a win and a lot of help to get in. They need to win and have two of the three teams ahead of them lose, or have one team lose and then have a tiebreaker between another. So any combination of Montreal, DC, and Philadelphia losing would help them get in. Or if they had one of those lose and they have the tiebreaker on somebody else, they would also get in. Montreal beat New York City handedly, meaning that they were no help and they were going to go into the playoffs. So it was back up to DC and Philadelphia. And this would be a lot more fun if Connor was here, but I'm going to make sure to send it to him because we're going to go down a path with our little tinfoil hats and go on a run towards a conspiracy theory. DC got killed by Charlotte 3-0. That was expected. It was very helpful to Atlanta. Charlotte played really well. DC didn't. Two things still needed to happen. Philly needed to lose, and Atlanta still needed to win. That's a lot to ask for, especially on decision day, with Philly being at home and Atlanta being on the road. Let's start off in Philly first. FCC start off poorly, conceding to Philly just 2 minutes in. Then things get funky. Cincinnati levels just before halftime through former Atlanta United man Yamil Assad, going into the break 1-1. Someone must have made a St. Louis City-sized offer on a phone call at halftime because literally 30 seconds into the second half, Jacob Glesnes, former MLS Defender of the Year, passes the ball directly into his own goal, giving FC Cincinnati the lead. Later on, Philadelphia come down the field and earn a foul right on the edge of the box. Was it a penalty? The ref says no, it was outside. I wonder why. The game would end and Philly would be out. That's all well and good, but Atlanta still needed to win. How were they getting on in Orlando? Oh, well, of course they are. They're off to a flyer. Braguzan looks like he's 56 years old, 10 years younger in goal than he is today. Atlanta takes the league 7 minutes in through a really nice combination play up top. Things are looking great, and it gets better as they turn home a goal on the corner kick to make it 2-0 in 15 minutes. Daddy Don is sitting there smiling as he and Arthur Blank sip champagne to a job well done, but not so fast. Orlando are continuing to push, and they get one back in the 42nd minute. Momentum for Orlando heading into the break can't happen. Just can't happen. Not on this script. They get on the phone and they squash this mess. And that's successful because whoever they called gave away a penalty to Atlanta just 20 seconds into the second half. Was it a legit foul? That's for you to decide. Maybe. But that doesn't fit into this narrative, so we're not going to talk about it. Daddy Don and Arthur Blank breathe a sigh of relief as order will be restored by the Palexi Piranchuk penalty. Or so you thought. Gayese stands tall and keeps them in the game, keeping it a one-goal match with a huge save down to his right-hand side. From this point on, it's all Orlando until the 88th minute, when a wide service bounces and falls to the feet of Duncan McGuire, who fires home to level the game and effectively knock Atlanta out of playoff contention. But this is where we're going to insert that Joe Dickerson, however, meme, because Don Garber got out of his chair so fast and he ran over to the VAR room. And that VAR room is probably set up in his living room, not this remote site in Atlanta. He went over so he can control it and said, "Wipe that goal off, sir. We will not be having that." So they call the referee to the monitor, and they see that the ball hits Duncan's body that might be his arm, but it's so close to his body that it looks like he doesn't even have an arm. It's not extended from the silhouette. It's whatever. Then it falls to him before the goal goes in. Daddy Don sees that and says, "That's enough for me." He gets a direct phone line into the referee's earpiece and tells him word for word exactly what to say. No goal, Orlando, handball offense. The last few minutes tick away, and Atlanta win the game. Philly lost the game themselves. Don Garber can sleep easy knowing that Arthur Blank's check will not bounce tonight. Was I close? Who cares? That's not even to mention that Brad Guzan was probably on some sort of like performance enhancing drug. Because if you really expect me to think that Brad Guzan is making 9 huge saves in a must-win decision day match in the year of our Lord 2024, you've got another thing coming. Now, realistically, the handball was the right call. The non-PK was the right call. But there was so much movement towards the end of this game. It was insane. It was so tough to follow along. I was actually watching like 3 games at once at one point because there was just so much going on. The joy of decision day. Philadelphia and DC are out. Atlanta and Montreal are in. And because they're in, let's transition over to preview the Eastern Conference play-in game. Because Atlanta frauded their way into the playoffs and now have to travel to Montreal to play. Rob Valentino's in charge. Momentum from the last match. This is going to be a really good game, but I think it's going to be really, really tough for Atlanta to get a result here. Montreal are red hot, winning 6 of their last 8 games to charge into the play-in game. And we know that if you get hot at the right time, you have a chance to do something really special in the MLS playoffs. Atlanta, on the other hand, have won their last 2 games against a poor RBNY side, and then, as we just spoke about, very fraudulently winning against Orlando. But they've picked up a ton of ties, and that means straight to PKs if it happens on Tuesday. That form makes it really, really tough for me to think that Atlanta can beat that, especially with Montreal at home. But we do have other players to watch here, right? Miranchuk in Atlanta starting to find his flow. Caden Clark in Montreal has got 4 goals and 4 assists since joining up in Montreal since midseason. It is going to be a really, really fun attacking game, especially because Montreal has conceded a ton of goals this year. They have a minus 16 goal differential. However, in the last 8 games we talked about, where there's 6 wins out of their 8, they've only conceded 6 times, and they have 3 clean sheets, all of which are at home. Atlanta haven't kept a clean sheet since Charlotte away, and they're not scoring a ton either. They haven't scored more than 2 in a single game since Miami away at the end of May. They're not scoring a lot. Montreal's not conceding a lot. They're starting to score more goals. Again, the biggest deal breaker for me is the home and away. Montreal are 8 wins, 5 draws at home this season, while Atlanta only has 4 wins on the road. Because of that, I have Montreal moving on to face Miami in the first round. I don't have Connor's predictions shared with me, but if I had to guess, he's probably picking Montreal too because he has no faith in his own team, which facts. But let's finish this up and move on to the West then. The play-in game with all of the controversy that we were alluding to in Scarf of the Week segment. A little bit of backstory on that. The Vancouver Whitecaps play at BC Place in Vancouver. They do not own that stadium, which means they do not determine the schedule. past a certain date. It turns out that the BC Place event organizers also did not plan far enough in advance for the possibility that MLS games would be played here this Wednesday. So they scheduled a Supercross event to kick off at the stadium the weekend after the game. And the setup for the event, not the event itself, the setup starts early enough to kick them out. There are no other venues in Vancouver. So Vancouver Whitecaps would have to go travel to the number 9 seeded team if they finished in the 8th spot at the end of decision day. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happens. Vancouver finished in 8th, Portland finished in 9th, and because Vancouver is not capable to host that game, the home field advantage that they earned by finishing in 8th will go away, and they will travel to 9th place Portland for the play-in game. I've said this a lot, and I've tweeted it before. Every time we take a step forward in the league, something like this happens. It's a PR nightmare. It gives the anti-MLS crowd fuel for the fire, and it's all around a bad look, right? BC Place is a great venue. They fill it out well, but this pushes the same sort of story we've been talking about for a while on this show, where do all teams need a soccer-specific stadium? Atlanta, Seattle, Vancouver, to name a few, they all play in and fill up mostly multi-purpose stadiums. Football, Charlotte plays in a football stadium too, but this is always a risk with stuff like that happening. Vancouver's owner, also super stingy, has a track record of not properly investing in this side. It's one of those catch-22 things. Finding the space would be hard, building it would take time, and this sort of stuff happens once in a blue moon. So is it worth there? I don't know. And I don't necessarily think that all teams need to go out and just build a 70,000 seat stadium or a 40,000 seat stadium or a 20,000, whatever. It would be great, but I don't think they need that. What they need to do is plan better. You can't be bumped off the spot in a playoff play-in game for the setup of a Supercross event. Not even the event itself, but just for them to set up, right? That's minor league stuff. And we are way past that in MLS 3.0. We don't need that sort of stuff. Either way, the game will go on, and it will be at Providence Park. And that's not great news for Vancouver because Portland have 9 of their 12 wins at home this year. Play this game at BC Place, and it's a completely different story. Vancouver are solid on the road, however, with more than half of their wins coming on the road. Vanni Sartini's men will wish that they were in better form, not having a single win since the middle of September, making them winless in their last 7 and losers of 4 straight. Portland, on the other hand, are faring only slightly better with they're winless in their last 6, and they have 4 ties in that span. If you need any reason why we don't need to expand the playoffs and have 9 teams make it, this game is why. Both of these teams could be out and nobody would feel bad. Either way, Portland score a ton of goals. 65 is more than the conference winners LAFC, but they also concede a ton. 56 is the second most in the conference playoff teams behind Colorado. Vancouver kind of the same way. And the entire West is the same way. Score a lot, concede a lot. Very MLS 4.0. Lots of fun, lots of vibes, making it anybody's game. Vancouver a little bit more conservative, playing a little bit closer. Portland's all out vibes. Personally, I think for me, the vibes are going to win out here. I think Portland moves on and sees LAFC in the final strictly because Portland are so good at home and Vancouver are shooting themselves in the foot here. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game. And I think I want to hear the soundbite from Vanni Sartini after this happens. I'd love to see what he thinks about this, but we're going to have to wait and see. These games kick off on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week if you are listening to them. First game is the 22nd. That's the Eastern Conference play-in. Montreal hosting Atlanta at 7:30 p.m. And then Wednesday the 23rd at 10:30 p.m. It's Vancouver. It's Portland. Both games are free on Apple TV, which is great. And actually, it looks like most of every first round game looks like it's going to be free, which is fantastic. So make sure you guys get on, open up that Apple TV app, and give it a watch. The playoffs are nothing but fun. Unless you are the Red Bulls, who are probably going to get beat up pretty good. But that's all from me, y'all. Connor will be back next week. So not next episode, but next week. And we will be back to normal. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you give us a follow wherever you get your podcast so you know the next episode goes out, which is a preview of that first round playoff setup. So 1 versus play-in, 2 versus 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. We preview all those games. It's going to be very, very fun. Make sure you're following us on all forms of social media so you know when we tweet and when we post and when we can interact with you, because that's what we love to do. We love interacting with our fans. So make sure you follow us over there and get involved in the fun. Okay, so thanks again for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.